Okay, this is being recorded so that it can be put on the website afterwards for people who weren't able to come to the forum. Okay. We still have people coming in, but I think we could go ahead and start. I've got it at 3:02. I'm going to put up the candidates forum procedures. We'll hope to be over around 4:30, but could go as late as 5 if we need to. We'll have 3 minutes for each candidate to introduce themselves. The current office holders will be introduced and have a chance to say hi. When we start questions from the audience, these will be voice questions, and I'll recognize people since I'm acting as moderator. Questions can be addressed to a single current council member, or questions for the candidates will actually be a question for the candidates and will be addressed by each of the candidates in turn. Candidates have 2 minutes to respond. Our timekeeper today will be Bruce Daggy. He'll give a warning bell after 90 seconds and a final ring at 2 minutes. I've turned off chat because I'd like to keep the focus on the verbal messages. And naturally, courtesy and respect are absolutely required. And asking a question is not an opportunity to make a speech. So please be considerate about that. Okay. So we have the mayor here today. I remember seeing John come in. At least I'm pretty sure I did. So I believe that Mayor Compton is here. And of course, Barbara, who is running for office again, is here. And also Phil Mento and Chris Grisham, who is the other those are the candidates for the 2 open council seats. And do we have any other regular count? Oh, Christine Dibble's here. Peter Nagrod is here. And I'm blanking on current council members. So
Eva and Bob.
yes, Eva and Robert. Okay, I don't see either of them, so I think we've got a full complement and we can just go right ahead. Does anybody have questions for the?
Eva is here.
Oh, Eva. I'm sorry, I missed you.
Oh, I just got here. I'm here now.
Oh, fabulous. Okay. And so does anybody have questions for people who are currently on the council? Okay. In that case, does somebody want to start out with a question for the candidates for council?
Georgette, you said something about intros.
Oh. I'm sorry.
Yes, well, we did invite
I
the candidates to
apologize
do
in terms
intros.
of introduction. For me, that was saying that you and several of the council members are here. And in terms of introducing the candidates, I think it's actually better for the candidates. Oh, I'm sorry, to be introducing themselves. Yes, my brain, nowhere. Thank you, John. Okay, Barbara, you're at the top left of my screen, so could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Georgette. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today, sort of, from your living room on this this lovely rainy day. It's a good day to be focused on issues that are internal to the town, I guess. My name is Barbara Raimondo. I have lived in Washington Grove at 414 Center Street for 25 years with my husband, Dennis Kirschbaum. And we raised our 2 children here they're now off way beyond other places right now. They're adults. They loved everything that we all love here in the Grove, the woods, the recreation, the playground, the Acorn Library, all of those things. We've really enjoyed our time here. I am currently retired. I spent 25 years in deaf education advocacy. My children are deaf, and I got involved in a lot of different deafness-related organizations during my career. I held a number of national leadership positions in that field. For example, I was the executive director of an association of schools for the deaf. I was on the board of the American Society for Deaf Children, which is a parents organization. I was president of the Maryland School for the Deaf for 10 years. So I have a lot of leadership positions at the national and the state level. I have been on the council for the past 3 years, and it's really been a lot of fun learning all the details. Things that I never thought I knew: how to plant a tree, where the stormwater goes, when it goes, wherever it is that it goes. And it's been really interesting learning about the issues. And I really have seen more than ever before how much we depend on our volunteers. And many of you who are here today, your contributions to the town, which are so appreciated. Some of the things that I've worked on are the shared use path, which seems to be a very long process, the shared use path from the end of Brown Street to Cobb's Branch. And Gaithersburg is setting up their shared use path that's going to connect their old town with us. And other issues that within the neighboring communities, the ADU issue, we just passed the ordinance for that. So I was very happy to see that in place. Going forward, we have, serious issues. We have discussion about what's going to happen with the commercial corner. We want to see something in place there that gives us better retail.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Better retail options, a better hello, welcome to the Grove. I look forward to working with all of the different residents and making the best decisions for the town. And I hope all of you feel free to reach out to me with any of your questions and your comments.
Great, thank you, Barbara. Philip's next on my screen. Philip. You're still muted, Philip?
How about now?
Great, yes, perfect.
Okay, all right. So, hi, everyone. Philip Mento, live at 102 Center Street. Some of you may know me. I helped out in the past quite a while on the Lake Committee. Sometimes I get to join the Gateway Committee. You certainly may have seen me picking up trash in the woods, helping the Gateway Committee clean up the roads and those type of things, and just around town. My background is I work for the federal government. I work in the banking regulatory agencies. I started my career as a bank examiner. So eventually I was one of those people that when bank would fail, we would take over the bank and sell off its assets. Part of my background here, which I want to apply to the town council, is working on long-term projects. Long-term funding, how do we deal with, things we want to build in the future? How do you finance for that? And how do you do it in an equitable manner so that we're not putting a burden on people, but at the same time, we have the funds to do the things we want. We're not caught off guard there. In my past neighborhoods, I was a treasurer of the HOA. I helped them get out of a tough spot where they didn't have the funds to pave their roads. They had not put together a good reserve. In our last former neighborhood, I was president just for a short while of the homeowners association there as well. So that's my background. I want to take those things and apply them here. Why? Here, because when we drove into this community, I was just hit with a feeling. I call it a community because I've met more people here, felt more friendships, and true community with neighbors here than I did in my past neighborhoods where I've lived for 20 years. So this is something very special. My wife and I and our grown-up kids have made an investment in this town. Plan to be here a long time. So I want to be part of keeping Washington Grove vibrant and growing and the beautiful place it is. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Phil. And next we'll hear from Chris Grisham.
There we go. I think I'm off mute.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Chris Grisham. I live on 215 Ridge Road. And we moved here in October of 2003. We're on, I guess, to give it some perspective for the Washington Grove people that have been here for a while, we're on the old WSSC properties. We're one of the 4 houses. Live right next door to Georgette, and so we came here from Silver Spring in 2003. My family, my wife Deborah Chambers, and my 2 daughters Lila and Jewel, and they grew up here, enjoying all the amenities here in Washington Grove. I guess for the kids, it's the summer in the parks, 4th of July parade, egg hunts. And for us, we really, what drew us here was the old saying, the town within a forest, with the lake and the trees and the architecture, walking paths, and in particular, the walking paths. We felt that it was a very safe, secure place to raise a family. Well, I guess after being here for a little over 20 years, I retired from the Department of Energy, and with that retirement, I have over 40 years of experience in program project management, which I like to also, bring to the table to support the town's efforts. I have maintenance and operations backgrounds in commercial nuclear and federal government nuclear projects. And more recently, I say recently, but it was one of the bigger things that I got involved in, and that was with the bike path that Barbara had mentioned earlier. I was a co-chair on the shared use bike path, and many of you probably know me from that. Working with extraordinary people here in the Grove that were on the task force that the mayor was able to pull together.
30 seconds.
Oh, wow, that's quick. Anyway, we looked at several I ran out of time. We looked at several local and government and residential comments and concerns and evaluated everything on the bike path using objective, verifiable evidence. And that's what I'd like to bring to the town council also, and making any town council decisions going forward. Look for your vote. We'll look forward for your vote. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Chris. All right. So actually, I'm going to start out with a question, something that Mimi and I have talked about recently. One of the issues that comes up occasionally, but fairly repeatedly, is how the town government can best communicate with the town residents. How do we have the most effective communication? And this has been looked at a few times over the years, but I was wondering what each of the three of you would think about ways to approach that. And I don't remember exactly where I said this, but basically, I'm going to go with the three candidates in the same order we started with introductions, but then as the questions go on, I'll rotate who starts answering the question first. So, but this time we'll start with Barbara.
Communication is an issue in every organization that I've ever worked with. People always feel like, I didn't know about that. I wish I had known more. I wish I had gotten more emails about that. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you get people who say, you send me too many emails, so I don't read them all. So honestly, I don't think there's a sweet spot in terms of communication. We have the Grove Alert that goes out that has the most important issues that people really need to know about. We need to encourage people to read the Grove Alert. We've talked about going on Facebook, things like that, but not everybody's on Facebook. I'm not aware of any specific social media where you can hit everybody all the time. And then you can say, well, let's just plaster all the social media. But again, not everybody's on it. And we may or may not have the people power to do that. Now, all of that said, we might want to convene a small committee of people who are experts in this. And I'm sure we have several of these in our town who really want to take a crack at looking at how to make it more effective. That would be one step in that direction. Because right now, like, I don't have an answer, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but it is something that's very important. One thing I would definitely encourage, and probably all of you who are here do read your emails, so I'm preaching
30
to the choir
seconds
here, but definitely encourage people that they really need to read things like Grove Alerts and the Town Bulletin, because that is where the information is. But again, we could convene a small group to take a closer look at this.
Great. Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, in communications area, you can either push or pull. You can push out communications, or you can pull people in. So we pull people in through our website, and we got to be careful about doing more of that, because it's going to put more on Christine's shoulders, but you kind of have to give her a special thanks for all the work she does on the website. The source for a lot of information can be that. We also have a listserv. I think it serves as a formal type of communication. And so my concern is I do like the Grove reports. I just would like to see more of a standard format, easier to use, so you don't have to click on it and then click on a link and then to find the information. And I think so much happens around here. There's a lot of things and word gets passed around that maybe we just, if we can, move to a weekly schedule. Love to see report outs also, not just from the mayor, but maybe on a weekly basis, just a check-in, a paragraph from each town council member to say, hey, this is what's going on in my area this week. Nothing overly burdened, but just keeping people up, I think, on a more regular basis.
Okay, and how about you, Chris?
Yes. So, I'm not really sure of what kind of communication issues we might be having. I know there's a lot of information coming out, besides the monthly newsletters, listserv, and special bulletins. So with that, and I guess, I'm just thinking the best approach, and that's been brought up a couple times, is to find out where the residents are wanting to hear this information from. And then the only way you really do that is to reach out. And kind of like, Barb mentioned earlier about trying to get another committee together. I know we have quite a few committees, but even a short survey sent out to the town, I think, just without trying to burden the townspeople, but to figure out where they would like to see communications come from, or what are they normally using, I guess, to find out what's going on in town, and then build from there. I definitely don't have any idea on how to resolve anything, because I don't really know. I don't think we all really don't understand the issues with communication here, and to find out what those are is probably the crux of the matter to work forward from. And that's all I have.
Okay. Okay, Peter, you have a hand up. What's your question?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
All right. So, Phil, you mentioned long-term projects, which is a very interesting phrase for Washington Grove. And so I'd be really interested in hearing what that means to you, and possibly from the other candidates, if they have any thoughts about like what they'd like to see us work towards in the future.
Actually, any question that is asked is going to go to all three council members. In this particular instance, Phil is the person that the questions start with, so that's a felicitous choice, but we'll go from Phil to Chris and then back to Barbara.
Okay. And how long, just a reminder, how long do we have to respond to the questions?
Oh, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, thank you. So, very good question. In my bio, I'm referring to the comprehensive plan. Hopefully everyone's read that. If you haven't, that's an excellent report, excellent analysis, excellent document. I think that's your way forward, is to follow that comprehensive plan. I mean, I can mention some of those things in the comprehensive plan, but I'm not suggesting anything different from that. I think the work has been done and it's clear. My focus is, okay, how do we get there? Because many of those things that the comprehensive plan mentions, the stormwater we're going to address, but maybe that might cost more than we have the ARPA funds for. There's other things we want to do, right? There's the boundaries. There's issues in the comprehensive plan. We're talking about boundaries, maybe better signage, maybe identity fencing. What can we do around the commercial center? How do we, the woods? The woods is our greatest asset. However, and the volunteer committees do an amazing job. But, we have to look at, long-term maybe solutions there. We have to give the Woods Committee and ourselves, the town, the resources to make sure that we hold on to those assets, that they continue to flourish.
Mm. Sounds good. Let's see, Chris?
Could I get the question one more time?
Peter asked about long-term projects for Washington Grove. Did I get that right, Peter, or do you want to restate?
No, that was it. Yeah.
Just
So just
long-term-
basically, yeah, Chris, like if you're on the council for the next 3 years, there's some of the things that you would be looking at, I'm kind of trying to push.
Okay. So, what would I be trying to push? I guess for me, it would be, I'm looking at it from a hierarchical standpoint, and the council members already on the council kind of have an idea of what they need to push. You got the mayor, obviously he's been mayor for quite a few years. So, I'll be, from my perspective, there's a lot of things that need to be done, obviously, that was already talked about, but, they need to be prioritized. And as a council member, I would work to support those priorities. Yeah, there's just too many things out there, I guess, and that's one of the reasons I'm interested in becoming a council member, is to help support those issues as a council group member and support the mayor.
Okay. All right. And then back to Barbara.
So I think most of what we do is our long-term projects. I mean, everything that we vote on, we have to think about, what's going to happen. I mean, and we get these comments from residents, what's going to happen in 20 years. And we do need to think about those things. I think when, for example, we just passed the ADU ordinance, the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and people are wondering, well, nobody can predict the future, what's going to happen with that. And I really want to look very closely at what happens over the next 3 years with those. What kinds of things are being permitted? What do they look like? Are there disputes or misunderstandings about how that ordinance is being implemented? And we do have something in the ordinance that says within 5 years, for sure, the town council will go back and take a look at that ordinance, but we could do so even earlier. So that's one area. The stormwater management, that's on the verge of, moving into action. We've been talking about it for quite a long time. It's a huge investment, and that's going to be a big thing. We want to make sure that that's implemented properly, and we've got engineers that we've been working with to help us do that. Another issue that is not really a long-term project and really isn't on our radar right now, but recently John and I were on a call with CSX Railway about emergency preparedness in the trains. And it really hit me that
30 seconds.
we don't really have a plan or a lot of knowledge about that. And that's an area that I think we really need to spend a little more time on. That's not a project per se, but that is definitely something that we should be looking at, I think.
Great. Okay. Let's see. I think the next person who has a hand up is Paula Puglisi. Go ahead, Paula.
Thanks. Speaking of long-term projects, in regard to the town resolution, acknowledging Washington Grove's racially exclusionary past and committing to an equitable, inclusive future, what are some actions that the town could take to move forward on the commitments made in that resolution?
Okay. Our first answer on that will be Chris.
So in thinking on what actions we should implement, I think, you know, I've seen signs around town about the interactions that we're trying to push forward as a town, that RASIC is with, you know, our local communities. I think actions are already in play, is what I'm getting at. And I think it's a great move forward. It needs to, I think, you know, take it one step at a time. It's new, so we need to try it out and to see how it plays out and how it works between the communities, and then build from there. You know, I think it's hard to try to guess the future because we don't really know, and we just started the interactions with the recommendations that RASIC could put forward. That's all I have.
Okay, then Barbara.
One thing that I've heard from a lot of residents, and this came out in the survey, was that people want to invite people from outside of Washington Grove to our events. Like, we have so many events throughout the year, and they're really lovely and wonderful, and people in town would really like to share them. And I know that the Circle Fest is coming up on May 25th. That is one area where people could be invited. Summer in the Parks, I know Eva has been trying to get more campers to register. That is open to people outside of Washington Grove. There are lots of vacancies. It would be really great to have other children that don't live in the Grove as part of that program. We have a lot of programs that happen now that I'm not sure that people either in Washington Grove or outside of Grove really know about. Like, I know the Women's Club has tons of activities with Emery Grove. They have the clothing drive on behalf of people in Emery Grove. There's the winter coat collection for the students in Washington Grove. There's the SNAP thing, for things for families at the Archway program. The white sock collections for the people in the homeless shelter. We could invite people from other communities to join the Women's Club and the other leaders in those events. And at minimum, though, let other people know that that's what we're doing, because I'm not sure that that's really known, again, either within Washington Grove or outside Washington
30
Grove.
seconds.
And encourage more people to be involved with that.
Sounds good. And Philip.
Thanks.
And actually, just 1 second.
Yeah.
Do you prefer Phil or Philip?
I always get that question. So
I'd like to do whatever you like best.
I don't have a preference. I know it's silly to say that, but I could tell people all day long, call me Philip, and they call me Phil.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
whatever.
Not meaning to divert, but
No, my family and my mother call me Philip. So anyone else can call me Philip or Phil or hey you. That's fine. I don't care.
great. Thank you.
So what can we do?
Yes.
You know, I think first we're going to have to back up, because I think we've gotten a little ahead of ourselves on the RASICs, at least ahead of understanding where we're going with this. So one thing I think we can do to move forward is I do think the town council needs to get together, maybe in private, and figure out what guidance they want to give RASIC, rather than allowing RASIC to just go without, you know, some sort of leadership. I want to see more leadership from the council there. I think the other thing is because RASIC's just a decision-making committee, and so they're making recommendations. They don't make decisions. I want to clarify that. I think what RASIC can do to move forward, though, in the short term, I think they increase communications on what they're doing. I think be a little more transparent on what they're doing and why. Because a lot of talk, really, let's just be honest, a lot of talk goes around about what RASIC is up to or what they're going to do. And I just think if we had a little more communication, and so I don't think RASIC understood the impact they're having. So more communication and transparency. The other good thing is I think RASIC's already doing this, or other people are joining RASIC. So we're getting kind of a larger, broader group of people on board for RASIC. And so I think that's wonderful. I think the more residents
30 seconds.
You can decide where you're going to go. But we do have to remember why RASIC exists. Is because we made a commitment through a resolution last year. And that resolution basically said the town council and the mayor are going to commit to further engage in individual collective work to understand bias and also the impact that we have, our policies have on our neighboring communities.
Okay. Excellent responses from everybody. I'm impressed as always, to tell you the truth. Okay, do we have any other hands for questions? Really? No more questions? Okay, Mimi. Oh, okay, we do have more hands for more questions. The first one I saw was Mimi Bulletin, so please go ahead, Mimi. Sorry, unmute.
I can wait till the end. I was going to ask a question on behalf of Virginia Casada. And I could go ahead, or we can see if someone else asks it since she's not here.
Oh, okay. We'll go with live questioners first then.
Okay.
Bruce Daggy then.
Yeah, I'm Anne. We're just sharing the same screen. In the event that the commercial corner is redeveloped, what would you like to see in that space?
So who can answer first?
All right. Okay, we're back to starting with Barbara.
Okay.
So there have been discussions about what would go there. And the one thing I hear more than anything is a coffee shop. So that's personally, I agree with that. I would like to see a coffee shop there. It would be a nice place for you to get your grounds for your compost. There is also discussion about renovating the part of the historical part of that long building. At the very end on the right is actually a very old building, an Oddfellows building. And there's been discussion about renovating that back to more of its natural state, which I think would be like perfect for the Grove, right? It would be beautiful and it would fit in with how we live here, the historical part. There, in the comprehensive plan, there is a plan to put housing in there. So room for a few apartments would work. The post office, we all want the post office to stay, and I think that would stay. There's also discussion about making the backside of the commercial corner more attractive. So that would be really ideal. Finding ways to put more trees in and just make it more like pedestrian friendly. The shared use path that I mentioned from Old Town Gaithersburg will go right by the commercial corner. And Gaithersburg has what so far looks to be a very lovely plan that includes landscaping that along the way there. So I think there's really a lot of potential to make that area a very, very lovely and something that we can feel like really good about, like when we drive past up there or hopefully walk or bike up there. So there are a lot of really good ideas for that commercial corner. And before anything happens, there will be public hearings because we're going to have to change our ordinances to make this happen. So there will be time for people to give input and see plans.
Super. Bill.
Yeah, so short answer, I love all Barbara's ideas. I mean, and those are in the comprehensive plan. It is a little disappointing sometimes to go up the commercial center because it has, it could be, it's the entrance in some ways to Washington Grove, but we've kind of tied the owner's hands. I know we had the whole issue with the 7-Eleven many years ago and so forth. We don't want to open a vape shop there. We don't want to open something that, gets crazy. But because we've limited it so much through our ordinances, he's limited as to who he can have in there and therefore the amount of rent he can charge, and using those funds to kind of make sure that there's upkeep in that area. So I think we need to move forward in that in a very thoughtful way, like Barbara's saying. Coffee shop's great, maybe a bakery. You just got to think about the impact of those type of things, like how much trash does it put out, what smells, or who potentially shows up. At the same time, you have to open it up a little because not only we would take advantage of it, but other people. And it's a great introduction to Washington Grove if you were to come to a commercial center that looks like or somehow balances the historic nature of Washington Grove. And you're like, wow, this is a really cool place. Well, welcome to Washington Grove.
Okay, and Chris?
So the first thing that popped into my mind is and that's primarily because I was on the shared use path, and Barbara had mentioned that, is, you know, trying to push forward to make sure that there's a nice pathway, I guess, that it cuts through part of the industrial, you know, parks, I guess, or the parking lot. And you know, that'll provide a really nice access point to come through into the Grove and out. And then whatever businesses are there, you know, coffee shop sounds really good. You know, in fact, like there's a lot of dog walkers in the community, so maybe even a dog walking coffee shop, you know, where people could go and socialize. You know, I haven't really paid a lot of attention to how we could revitalize, although you know, getting rid of the dumpster was huge, and also way back when, you know, getting that sidewalk put in at the light at the corner, that was you know, a huge improvement, I think. And I think, you know, with that, you know, small pushes towards progress like that. And that's all I have.
Okay. Megan, you have a question.
Yeah, you've talked about many of the things that you'd like to see move forward. Do you have heart for any orphan issues or projects, things that we don't talk about that you think really would be great to move forward in the next 3 years?
So you're asking about what ideas they have for
I'm calling them
things that don't usually come up?
Right, orphan issues, things that you
Orphan issues. Okay.
orphan issues that you have heard about that you think are maybe being overlooked, that you'd like to see, you know, raise awareness about or get some traction on.
Cool. Okay. That one starts with Phil.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, a couple weekends I got a chance to walk around the neighborhood and introduce myself, and I walked along, you know, Washington Grove Lane. So consistently, I heard about the traffic and the noise and the trash. I know that we have addressed in the past some of the traffic. You know, you have speed bumps, but there's the traffic continues. People with loud mufflers, those type of things. So I would like to see more focus on that. Washington Grove goes through our town. It doesn't go around it, it goes through our town. So I think one thing is signage to make sure people understand they're coming through a historic town. There could be other ways to do it. We could push for, you know, speed cameras. There's things that we could do, more speed bumps, those type of things. I know a lot of the neighbors there don't feel like they get the same service on their lawn pickup or their leaf pickup. So we have to remember those people are part of Washington Grove, and why Washington Grove Lane is kind of a difficult issue because it involves the county or potentially the state and so forth. I think that is kind of an orphan issue, or one that needs to come back on the table and more attention paid to.
Thank you.
All righty, and then Chris.
Yes. So orphan issues, I mean, that's kind of a hard subject, I guess, to try to tackle. But one of the things that I keep hearing on and off for a number of years is, you know, like a lack of facilities out in the West Woods or electricity or whatever. And, you know, because there aren't that many houses, obviously out in that area, you know, there's all kind of like vandalisms occurring, you know, people cutting through the fence and accessing the lake. So maybe, and you know, this is, I guess, spur of the moment type thinking, but enough to get some kind of a security cam or something out there that we could keep tabs of and see what's going on because of the lack of eyes that are out there. You know, that's about the only thing that I could really think of right now that might be an orphan issue.
All righty, and Barbara.
I have a few. The first that comes to mind is Americans with Disabilities Act access to the playground. Recently, there's been a lot of discussion about changes to the playground and new equipment, and Eva sent out a survey, and that's been a very long process, and Eva had gathered quite a bit of information on that. And one thing that is clear is that we have to, anything we do with the playground, and really anything in our town, we have to think about access for people with disabilities. So that's one area that I really tried to emphasize. We're not really doing a big overhaul of the playground, but as we put in like new the material for walking and for possibly putting a path from each piece of equipment to another one, making sure that pathway is accessible to people who use wheelchairs, and trying to take pieces, you know, bit by bit, and making sure that they're accessible. So that's a really important thing that I think. And then I think, you know, Eva and the committee has been very responsive to that. So I think we'll see some good changes there. The one other thing I mentioned is the train and safety. If, you know, there's an accident of the train, you know, what do we know what to do? You know, we don't really pay attention to that. It's sort of in the back of our minds, but we don't have a plan, or we don't really know what we're doing about that. So I would like to spend a little bit more attention on that. And the other thing about the train is just the stop itself, because we keep hearing, you know, Mark might close that stop at some point, you know, there are all these different plans out there. And I feel like it's floating out there, but we don't have like a designated person who's looking at it. Maybe we need to do something like that and make sure that we protect that stop as much as we can.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Good point. Okay, next question up is from Carrie Banikowski.
Thanks, Georgette, and hi, everybody. I want to know what the candidates are prepared to do about the abandoned properties in the neighborhood. I happen to live near quite a few that I walk past every day, and I don't know, you know, I know there's been some closed meetings with the councils about it and the attorneys, and I just think it's really unpleasant and an eyesore for the neighborhood. So I'd like to know how you plan to address that. Thank you.
I think up at the first position for this one is Chris.
Hi. So I haven't been keeping real close tabs, but I know that the town has been working on that. And I know that they've been looking at different other jurisdictions actually to see what they do with abandoned properties. I think, you know, what I would think best would be to support the current activities that are going on and moving that forward. You know, obviously we're not the only community, the only town that has issues like this. And probably the best thing to do is to see what others are doing, so we could, from a easier legal standpoint, I guess, push forward and try to handle, you know, the abandoned properties. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I think there, you know, besides the fact that I know that there's activity going on now amongst the council members, like you say. That's all I have. I just support those efforts.
Okay. And Barbara?
Yeah, Carrie, as you mentioned, we have met with the attorney, and there are some options. We just, as a council, haven't moved forward to make a decision about it yet. So, that is in the works, and I think it is on the minds of people on the town council. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's definitely something that we do want to respond to. So, I think we are going to respond when we have the time to get together and make a decision.
Okay, and Phil?
Yeah, I'm sure the council can't talk completely openly about the issue, because there are, legal issues involved and so forth. So, but what happens is you have neighbors, friends, right? And they cannot live in their houses anymore, and then family members hold on to them. So we understand why they get in this situation. But I do believe that the town council has to start being a little more aggressive about it and create ordinances around it, because this isn't just about an eyesore. What happens is, if these houses continue to deteriorate, you're going to lose those houses. They won't be able to be renovated. I think it'd be a big problem, a shame, if one of the houses on the circle would have to be torn down and rebuilt. So it's one thing to say it's an eyesore. It's one thing to say, oh, it's dilapidated and so forth. But at some point, you're starting to threaten the historic nature of the neighborhood if you don't address these problems. So I'm hoping, and I'm sure that I know the council's got a strong focus on it and is trying to move forward on it. So hopefully we'll see action soon.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
And our next question is from Janet Latero.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Georgette. My question concerns traffic, which Philip, you touched on in one of your answers there, but I'd kind of like to hear from all of you what you could see doing to help to control and maybe even mitigate traffic in town. By traffic, I'm also talking about foot traffic. I live on Cherry Avenue technically, but our house fronts Ridge Road. And with the subdivision of a lot of properties on the lower end of the bridge, with the nearby development, we're getting a lot more foot traffic in. It's given me thoughts of maybe we need a walkway along Ridge Road, because sometimes, honestly, it's hard to drive down the road when there are people, walking along the road, which of course is their perfect right. But I feel like it could be a dangerous situation for them. And also concerning our walkways, I've noticed recently more use of walkways, again, fine. But in the space of 1 hour the other day, I had 2 bicycles flying down Cherry Avenue, and one person on one of those motorized scooters. And what can we do, to keep vehicles off of our walkways? I think that's going to be of increasing concern, especially with a shared use path that could bring more traffic into town. I just wanted to get your views on what you saw, how you saw the problem, and what you think some of the fixes might be to make the town safer and more accessible for everybody.
Okay. And okay, this one starts out with Barbara.
So, well, that's an interesting point about Ridge Road, because I know every time I drive down Ridge Road, it's kind of the same thing. There's always people in the middle of the road. I hadn't thought about putting a walkway alongside of it. I don't know if it really does need that, or if if drivers need to be really careful. I know for me, I just, 1 mile an hour, and I know it's going to take me 10 minutes to get down the road, but that's okay. But that's worth chewing on. That's an idea worth chewing on. Motorized vehicles on the walkway, we've had this problem in the past. I don't know, because the people who enforce those kinds of laws are the police, and we don't have a police force. And this is probably not one of their first priorities. I know, let's see. Yeah, some of the residents were involved in discussions with police a few years ago, but this was really about the bikes on the larger roads and the noise of all that, not necessarily in the Grove. But I have seen motorized vehicles in the Grove. I think, you know, we need to document when we see that and keep track of it, and then we can file a report with the police. Like if we know, oh, it's the same vehicle that's coming in, and this is the description, and this is many times he came, and those kinds of things. If we can document something like that and share it with the police, then we can ask them to do something about
30
it.
seconds.
If it's a one-off and the guy's gone, you know, honestly, I don't know how much, you know, I don't know. I wish I had a better idea for that, but at least document when we do see it.
Okay. And then Phil?
Yeah, I like the idea of a path along Ridge Road. I walk along Ridge Road and I always have to look over my shoulder because people drive quietly and slowly, but still it's tight, right? So that makes sense. I think we should look at that. Yeah, there's people that run through town in cars way too fast. You know, this is an issue. People have to decide whether they want speed bumps or not. There's a lot of pros and cons around those type of things. It can even, if you have more speed bumps, people will drive slower. But us as residents then have to go over those bumps more often than anyone else. So you'll have to make those decisions. As far as the pathways and so forth, I think if you do see increased use of that, we could, and it's on a specific thing. Let's just say, for example, it's a Grove. You could do things to kind of gate the ends of it, not to keep people from being unable to walk through them, but maybe to make it a little more clear through signage and fencing or gates or wood fencing that this is not a path for bikes. Unfortunately, then it sometimes falls to us as citizens to, you know, to yell out to someone or say, hey, you're not supposed to do that. We have to be careful when we do that and so forth. But I understand what you're saying. I think we should at least take a look at the Ridge Road issue. Thank you.
Okay. And Chris?
So I too live on Ridge and have seen an increased amount of traffic, but I think, so what can we do? And I think if you take a look at what have we done, right? The town speed limits, I haven't seen any place else besides maybe a garage or a parking lot that says, you know, you have to drive at 15 miles an hour. So there are a lot of commuters that go up and down our road that speed. And, you know, I don't know, if it's a townsperson, then maybe the neighbors, as they see him going by, to try to, you know, figure out who they are, and then the town could reach out and ask them to slow down, you know, because of the hazards. Regarding, you know, people walking and driving, kind of like Barbara was saying, you know, you kind of get used to driving down the road slowly. I mean, it's not that far from one end to the other. You know, it depends. For me, I enjoy seeing people walking and enjoying the Grove. We asked for inclusivity, right? To get people to come to the Grove. And then it's going to be hard to say, well, you can't walk here, you can't ride here on certain areas. Yeah, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. We want to be welcoming, you know, but
30
how to control
seconds.
that? Yeah, I don't know. I think we've taken measures to do that. The other thing is that, you know, the thing that just crossed my mind is we have an emergency and safety committee, and we should maybe tap into them to see if they have some listed items that we might, besides speed bumps, that we might want to try to use. This isn't the first time this issue's come up, so I'm sure that there's, you know, things out there that we could probably work from.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see a specific hand up at the moment. Peter. Peter, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, question is about the lake, the soccer fields. So there's conversation going around about whether they should be opened up. A lot of gossip, and I'm just curious as to your thoughts about what should or could happen with the lake and the soccer fields.
Sorry, that question starts with Phil.
So going back to one of my other responses on RASIC, I think RASIC needs to be a little more transparent so that people understand what they're up to concerning the lake, whether they're going to allow trying to get more access to the lake and those type of things. I think some of those things are rumors. I think some of those things are just ideas to address, like saying, oh, we've heard this from our other communities. So we have to clarify that here's my personal opinion. Opening up the lake creates immense liability for us. These people would not be residents of Washington Grove. Therefore, there's liability. Because Washington Grove residents know and understand that if they go swimming at their own risk and those type of things. But once you start having people from the outside go and use the lake, then it questions the liability. You're going to put more pressure on our lifeguards. Do we have to hire more lifeguards? That's another issue. There's also, the more people you get, there's more, questions about how does that affect the chemical nature of the lake? I was on the lake committee. They test that water on a regular basis and so forth. So it's little things like that that get involved. I understand. I think the RASIC needs to continue to be allowed to at least discuss the issue so that we can hold our heads up high.
30 seconds.
We looked at this issue about opening the lake or opening our soccer fields, and it's not because we don't want to be diverse. It's because of the potential liabilities and the increased cost to the community. That said, then maybe there can be limited times, parties or events where you could open up the field and the lake. But these are great assets, and I'm concerned mostly about the liability involved in doing these things. That said, let's let RASIC talk about the issue with us.
Okay, and Chris.
So, first of all, I don't know all of the financials associated with this, but the town's taxes and resources are being used, I think, for the most part, for maintaining, the lake and maintaining the field. And then so with that said, I would think that if we do open it up, that we're very careful on how we open it up and who we open it up to ensure that we don't end up, spending more than we really allocated or want to resolve issues that are being caused by outside groups or forces or whatever you want to say. On the other hand, if you open it up, because the way I see it is that, and I could be wrong, but this is private property in essence. And then looking at some of the charter language, it seems that we should be able to charge accordingly if we open it up. So, hold a lottery if we want to maintain a smaller group of people to come to use our facilities. And once the lotteries let, and then whoever
30
gets the
seconds.
lotteries, they could pay a fee, kind of like on a private pool basis. Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, and Barbara.
When it comes to the lake, I have a lot of questions about the logistics of how that would work. So for example, right now, there are no bathrooms there. And my understanding is, and I'm not an expert on this, that my understanding is that lakes in Maryland that are open to the public do have requirements for things like that. Plumbing and bathrooms and drinking water and things like that. So we would really, in my view, have to really take a look at what would be required if we were to open it up and what those costs would be. So without quantifying that, I don't have I can't answer that. Theoretically, I would like to see the lake open to anybody who wants to swim there. It's beautiful. But if we are going to expose ourselves to putting in facilities that are extremely expensive, those are costs that we really have to think about. So it's sort of kind of like a balancing act. As far as the field goes, my understanding is it is open. My understanding is that there used to be soccer goals there, and that attracted a lot of people, and now those goals are gone, and we don't really have that so much. I would like to see the soccer field used more. What I have been hearing from people is that sometimes groups would come out and they would leave a lot of trash there. There'd be a lot of cars parked where they weren't supposed to be parked. And I really do think that's something we really have to balance. And, I would like to see more usage in that park. I don't know if it's time to relook at that and find a way to make it, open to people and usable and practical for people who live here. So it is something, again, balancing the practicalities of something with opening it up.
Okay. Do we have hands for any more questions? Megan.
Thank you. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the committee structure and how that works. Are there ways to make it more effective, more accountable, and maybe more welcoming to people who want to volunteer? And are there other, part two, could we look at having more work groups and not starting new committees? I mean, identify projects where people could really do a deep dive and then either, information for a committee or for the council. So two things.
Okay, this one starts with Chris.
So, those are good questions, right? And hard to answer, I think. For me, we do have a lot of committees. And I think this might sound odd, but I think more accountability, I guess, from the committees through the town council member liaison reporting to the mayor. So, and the reason I say that is I took a look at the committees. Gosh, what's that called? Not really the bylaws, but the resolution that kind of forms the committee, and it makes it sound like that the counselors basically are court reporters that report back to the mayor on what happens at the committee level. But in some cases, committees are using taxpayer dollars from Washington Grove, and I find it kind of odd that there isn't like an elected official who is being held accountable for how those funds are being spent. And maybe anyway. And what was the second part of the question?
Oh,
Sometimes it was about, is there another level of involvement that would be less than a committee or more focused than a committee, like work groups, to explore in depth an issue?
Yeah. So along those lines, I think the town has already implemented that, right? We have the lake cleanup work group, and we have, and it's coming out of a committee, but
30 seconds.
woods cleanup. We have, a lot of different work groups, I guess, that are volunteers that last maybe for that afternoon or the day, or maybe even 2 days. And yeah, I can't think of any other expansions, on how to, I guess. That's all I have.
All righty. So then back to Barbara.
So I don't have a different plan for the committee structure. I mean, people have chairs and they follow it. There is a resolution outlining how they're supposed to function, basically follow the Open Meetings Act, generally speaking. They are not official bodies of the government, so that they're sort of a in-between body, not official, but not unofficial. I don't have a better plan for that at this moment. I think if you're concerned about accountability, anybody who's concerned about accountability at any time, you should contact the town council member who's responsible, the liaison or the mayor, and ask if you think, oh, how did that fund get spent? Why did they spend that money on that thing? Or they're getting allocated this much. I think that's too much. I want some more detail. We can get you that detail. Jean, our treasurer, keeps very close track of these things, so we can definitely answer your questions. So I do think there is a shared responsibility of accountability within the town, that if you see something, say something, but if you have any kind of questions, you should really bring them up. You should feel free to do that. I think sometimes people are very timid, like they don't want to make somebody mad, but I don't really see it that way. I think everybody
30 seconds.
who lives here has a perfect right to question, how our tax dollars are being spent, and get a clear answer as to why that is. And to the deep dive issue, I agree with Chris that we do have groups that are focused on one particular thing. For example, we have a committee that is overseeing what's happening with the shared use path, the Washington Grove connector. And I assume that that's going to disband once that thing is finally built. So we do have some examples of that.
Thank you.
Okay. And Phil.
So it's a good question. I like the question because it hits a lot of things here, which is, and I agree with Chris, when we talk about accountability, I mean, yeah, we're all citizens, but the accountability is not with every citizen to watch over a committee. The accountability for committees roll up to town council members. So as I was stating before, if we could have more weekly report outs from town councilors about what's going on in their committees, that would help people understand and get ahead of things instead of finding out months later, oh, this much was spent, or I wish I'd known that, I would have said something. So I think we need to take a look at the scope of all the committees, what they're supposed to do and their responsibilities. And accountability is not a bad word, which means, okay, we gave you $30,000 out last year. What did you do with it? And did you have goals at the beginning of the year set out by the council? Did you achieve those? Because if you don't have those and tied to like your longer term planning, you don't move forward. So I do think there has to be some more structure around that. Some people are considering, should we have term limits for who runs a committee? I think that should be open for discussion as well. Who gets to vote? So another concern is, are people that are not residents here getting to vote? In other words, to push ahead with spending our money, but they're not part of the group there. I think, you have to look at those things because it's important that the decision making around committees is clear. And there's a scope and there's responsibility and there's performance. Are we moving toward our goals? What are the long-term goals? Are we moving towards those? So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you.
And we have a question from John Compton.
No, we don't have a question. I just think I'd better weigh in on that last question that was asked, because this is now well, for those of you who've been around, we've had the issues with what is the relationship of the committees to the town? How do they spend the money? How are they organized? But overarching all of that is the fact that the town has a paid staff of 1.25 persons, and the committees, as everyone knows, is in fact effectively the town staff. So it's particularly critical to the functioning of Washington Grove, given that the volunteerism being encouraged, and that it happened, with we bring in new interests. We don't, try and keep it as convenient, vivial, and as encouraging as possible. So a large part of answering questions about committee activities must be made keeping that in mind. Accountability. The spending of the committees is accounted for. The fact that no one, and I don't even understand why the question is coming up, because we rarely ever get any criticism of spending by committees. In fact, I'd be hard pressed to think of one over the years. So to somehow believe that there is some poor oversight, it doesn't have any basis in incident. But let me just tell you how the committees are kept accountable, how spending by the town is kept accountable. The treasurer, with the mayor, essentially approves all expenditures. Just because an expenditure is in the budget, which allocates potential spending into various goals and various functions in the town. And sometimes we contract, I call it a contract with committees, with allowing them money to spend on their activities. Those activities are essentially never undertaken, or certainly never paid for, unless it's approved by either the treasurer or the mayor. Often, or when it's appropriate, the council will also weigh in on exactly how the money is being spent. I can think of the survey. We did the DEIE survey. That one was approved in the budget, but it was examined carefully before it was actually allowed to proceed. Coming up, we have an important thing which has become an issue in town, and that is that RASIC has proposed. It's coming to the council as soon as we finish with the election. Some diversity and equity and inclusivity training. The current council believes this is could be a very valuable exercise for the town, in keeping with the resolution that was passed last year. How it's done and how many individuals it benefits throughout the town are important issues. And as far as I'm concerned, those funds will only be contracted or allocated when the council is satisfied that this is going to be done in a way that is appropriate to the goals of that idea. Now, the council may say something else differently, but from my point of view, this is going to get perfectly thorough scrutiny so that it benefits. If we go ahead with it, it will benefit the maximum number of people in town. I'm using that as an example. Even small stuff gets some oversight. So accountability, I don't see as any issue. I mean, someone's going to have to produce some real facts to make that a problem here for the town. Compositions of committees, how they operate, how we believe that would work better. Those were part of have been part of the discussion. The council has a resolution 2019 with guidelines for committees that are not directives. They are recommendations. The council, in my opinion, only listens to and allows committees to spend town money when they are confident that it's being spent well. Witness the Recreation Committee, witness the Woods Committee, Woods Committee spends a lot of money. Anyway, I'm not going to go into this anymore. It's just the way it's been brought up as an issue. I think it's only an issue because of a very specific concerns that some residents they're uncomfortable with the way RASIC has been operating. I have more to say on that, but I don't think this is the right forum. But as far as the committees are going, I just think the accountability is not a problem here in town. And the relationship of the committees to the town is very, very important because they provide tremendous labor and expertise and all sorts of advice for the council and everything. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Megan, is this a different question or?
I just want to clarify that I was not asking about fiscal accountability. I know that is really tight and well done. I wasn't questioning that.
Yeah, can I state the same thing? When I stated accountability, it's about if you have a resident or two, and we do have some talk around town about, hey, how are committees formed? Can we take another look at it and so forth? If there's questions about it, it doesn't mean there's a problem. It means that people are not having the transparency they want, or they want reassurances about how does it operate and how does it work, because that makes sense. People want to know how their money's spent. And I think it's okay to say, what are the goals of the committees, and ask at the end of the year, have we met our goals? Why not? What are the long-term plans? But as far as, the spending and the accountability, I think people are very good with their money around here, maybe a little too good, because a lot of people don't use their full allocated funds, and we do have goals, and we need to reach those goals. So I'm accountability is scope. It's about governance, responsibility. And then the question was, how do we handle one-time things? Well, it could be that we also give committees the ability to delegate a small tiger team to look at a particular issue, because some of these one-time issues come and go, and we don't need to have a full committee looking at it. So I wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Phil.
So Phil already answered that question before, right? Did you not answer that question before?
I assume that Phil's answer was to provide additional clarity. Would either you or Chris like to add anything to what you said?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Or Chris could go first. I don't mean to jump in, but I would like to add a little.
Yes, by all means do, Barb.
Okay, so yes, I do think it's really important to point out how knowledgeable our committee members are and our chairs are, and the level of work that they do. And I'll use the lighting committee. When I started on as the liaison for that committee, honestly, like some days I just thought I wasn't really clear what they were talking about. These lighting legislative issues, the tariffs, who owns what, who the different players are. It's very involved and very complicated. And our committees have taken these tasks on and learned all the intricacies and the ins and outs, and have mastered the information, and have really moved forward in so many, same with forestry and beautification, and so many other committees as well. So John is right. And I do agree that they are accountable for, they do the things that they say that they are going to do, like 99.9% of the time. So I do think it's important for everybody to know that. And really, and I have seen being on the council more than ever before, more than when I was a resident, just how much people know and how much we depend on them and how valuable their services are. So I appreciate John pointing those things out.
Thank you, Barbara. Anything to add, Chris?
So real quick, I guess, you know, when I talk about accountability, I guess, first of all, you know, the committees are great. And I don't know of any particular issues and accountability issues and budgeting issues. I really don't. But by looking at the resolution, I guess, and then I'm drawing back on the experiences that I've had as a program or project manager. And, you know, requirements kind of flow down. And then what I'm thinking the council is chartered to do, right, is to try to push forward with agendas initiated by, you know, maybe as a council, but also by the mayor. The mayor could prioritize, and then we try to make sure that that happens correctly. And then we're the elected officials, right? The charter says that the mayor has ultimate authority over the budget, but the council approves a budget that sends it to the town citizens for final approval. And bottom line to me is follow the money. And I'm not saying there's a problem, but in accountability, if for whatever reason somebody finds something going awry with some of the budgeted activities at the committees, you know, is it the elected official, the town councilors who are the liaisons, that you know have to pay the burden of accountability?
15 seconds.
How does a town hold accountable the committee members? And that's why I'm saying it should be the town council liaison.
Okay. All right. Now, Megan, you still have your hand up. Do you want that? Okay, great. All right, then Mimi.
Yeah, thanks. I'm asking this question on behalf of Virginia Casada, and it falls right into the discussion of committees. And I'm shortening it a bit because a lot of what's been said already answered it. Do you think people who do not live in the town of Washington Grove or pay taxes here should have voting privileges on town of Washington Grove committees?
Okay. All right. This one is a first answer from Barbara.
No, I don't think they should have voting privileges because they don't know enough about the issues in town to give an informed vote. When you live here, you live, breathe, and smell what's going on in town, and you talk to your neighbors, you hear things that are going on. When you're outside of town, it's very easy to get caught up in one point of view or another without having all the information. And it's also very easy to stand on the outside and point the finger when you think somebody's doing something wrong. And I know this is about the lake issue and the RASIC issue, and so I will address that. The individual who is the chair of that committee said that he believes that the town is violating people's constitutional rights by not allowing non-residents to use the lake. And that's really problematic when that's your first salvo into the debate. So I thought that was very off target, off point. The person did not have the information. And it's not, when we talk about town resources and channeling resources, we're not just talking about financial resources, but when you make recommendations, then people spend a lot of time and energy discussing those recommendations and thinking about them. And those are resources.
30 seconds.
And so I just don't feel that people who don't live in town have the ability to understand the nuances of the decisions that are made. Fine to be on a committee, great. We want some, other perspectives, but to vote, I don't support that.
Okay, thank you. And Phil?
So there's different types of voting. If you're talking about voting to expend money, then I think it should be limited to a town residents, right? I don't think someone from the outside should be able to impose financial conditions upon us. That said, I also think that you put someone like Racick in a tight box, because as a town council and the mayor himself, last year, almost a year ago, it was that we said we would commit, and one of the things we said was to commit to support ties with neighboring communities and consider their welfare and the impact that our policies and decisions will have on them. So that is why you have one or two outside people, maybe someone from East Gaithersburg or so forth, on Racick to give their opinions, because this is what the council said they committed to do in the future. Consider the welfare and impact our policies and decisions have on them. So I think it makes sense to have those people join a committee. This is a committee that is more about social culture rather than infrastructure and all that. But no, they should not. And so let's say the committee is saying, well, we got to vote. Do we think we should bring the issue of like the mayor was saying, a diversity inclusion person forward? Well, what if someone from the outside on that
30
group said,
seconds.
I think you should do that. Should they not be able to have an opinion on whether they think, because we've asked them to be on our committee, could they say, yeah, I would vote to move this forward? But then, expending the money and so forth, I know you have to pull that out. But, I think this is why we need to allow Racick to have at least a conversation, open conversation without being cut off, because some of this stuff is blown out of proportion. I don't believe there's actually a committee that's forcing some sort of constitutional right upon us to say that we must open the lake. I think at that point, that's a bit of a rumor. That said, I've already, and I'm going over time. I already stated my strong opinion before. I don't think the lake should be open to the outside people. I'm probably hardest on that because of the liability issues, the expenses, and the work involved. It's just, I don't see the benefit to it.
Okay, thanks, Phil. And Chris.
So regarding voting, I think right up front, I don't think outside entities should have a voting authorities here in Washington Grove. And fundamentally, would we allow somebody to come in and vote in Washington Grove if you're not a registered resident here in Washington Grove? Even with this, with the town council and the mayor, are we going to have, and we don't have people coming in from the outside that's not registered here as a resident in Washington Grove. And again, I can't emphasize enough, a resident in Washington Grove, you could own property, but if you don't live here, you're not a resident. And along the lines with what Barbara had said, if you live here, you really know what's going on, or you know more than others. But, to bring people on to committees on an advisory role, I mean, I've done that many times in the federal government. We've had huge committees that I was responsible for, and we would occasionally bring in subject matter experts, and they would put out their spiel, give us our presentations, and then it would be up to the committee members to decide, running a vote. I think, yeah, and that's my position. I think, if you're a town resident, then you should have the right to vote, and only town residents have the right to vote on town issues. Thank you.
We have a question from Paula.
A lot has been said about Racick, and I'm not going to make a big speech, but I do have to correct something. The Lake Work Group chair did not unequivocally say that he knew that the town was violating constitutional rights. He said that he wondered about it. He was not a constitutional lawyer, and he was just simply interested in examining that policy as our resolution said we would. He tried to get a town resident to co-chair with him because he said he didn't want to chair by himself since he was not a resident. So we talk about people from the outside not knowing what's going on. There are a lot of rumors that happen within Washington Grove too. So I need to clarify that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. Peter?
Okay, this is my last question. So Georgette began this asking a question about communication. And we heard from the candidates about their plans. What I'd be interested in hearing about is, as a counselor, what are you going to do to engage your the people that are electing you? Are you going to sit at home and be reactive, or do you have any thoughts about how you're going to be proactive, gathering information and to help you make the right decisions? Like by coming to Circle Fest. Plug.
Okay. This one starts with Phil.
Okay. All right. Circle Fest is great, so don't worry about that. You know, as part of running for town council, you know, I spent hours walking around town, knocking on doors, introducing myself. One person who didn't know me asked me what I was trying to sell them, you know, like a new roof or something like that. So I went around to people I don't know and introduced myself. And my question to them was, what are your concerns or issues around the neighborhood? And I found out some very interesting things. They all have different sub neighborhoods, right? As you get towards up Washington Grove, their concern is the sale that the church across the street, and the fact that they can't park on their own on Boundary Street because others people park there. Other people have issues around the stormwater and so forth. So I think that what we have is we have a very involved group of people that we see on the committees and we see in our town council meetings. But then there's another group, and it might be actually a majority of residents that we don't reach out to. And they've all the two camps. One, like one guy said, I'm just not interested in the town council thing, but that's great, you're running. Others are like, I don't want to get in the middle of a fight. So I think that, and I think Eva's actually done this, which is she's gone and talked to other people about some of the issues, like yeah, I don't see a lot of maybe some of the newer families getting involved. So I think it's very important, Peter, for us to walk around and talk
30 seconds.
I think reaching out and getting them to come to these events and all that, but a lot of people won't come to you. So I do think we have to get out to them. And I would like to see some better sort of town communication on a weekly basis that's official and not just the listserv. So it's a good question. Thank you.
All right. And Chris.
So I've been definitely guilty of kind of staying at home and being by myself. And that's because one, I've been fairly happy with what's going on in town, to tell you the truth. I've really enjoyed it. And you know, what got me interested in becoming a counselor, for example, is when I participated on the bike path and realized how many different viewpoints there were on the limited number of connections that we had. And then trying to get those viewpoints, you know, we went out and then sent out, you know, questionnaires, talked to people on the roads, on the streets. And then so what would I do? I think, you know, if elected, you know, the mayor would then assign certain areas of responsibility, and I would start there and focusing on whatever the activity might be to see what kind of you know, services and assistance and what the concerns are regarding those areas, and then pushing that forward to the council for deliberation and you know, maybe moving some actions, but definitely getting out and then talking to people. I think, you know, you need to be, I think you can, I'm sure once you're in for a while, you could walk around the streets
30 seconds.
You know, get people to comment and and provide input. But, you know, if you don't have a focus, you're going to get inundated with so many different things that you're not going to be able to get anywhere and make any traction. So that's where I would start. It would be with responsibilities assigned me to go out and start beating the bushes to find out more. Thank you.
Okay, and Barbara?
So I agree with you, Peter, that it's important to show up at different events and talk to people when you can. When people contact me about things, sometimes I'll say to them, can we have a phone call about this so I can understand your position a little bit more and get into a little bit more depth? Or if I see an issue where I think, well, I think that resident knows a lot about this, I will contact that person and ask them what they know. So I really do try to be open to the different points of view. When we do hear the comments, like on the ADU issue, we went through every single comment and said, you know, are we addressing this in some way? Or maybe not exactly the way the person asked, but we are addressing it in another way. So, you know, I do feel like those areas of being responsive are really important. And yeah, so I agree with you that those are things that we need to continue to keep doing. But I would also say that I would also encourage people to speak up more too. Like for people who have an opinion about something but don't want to weigh in on it, I'm always kind of curious, like, why is that? You know, do you think people don't listen? Because actually I find the town councilors really do listen to the comments that we get. So I would, on one hand, yes, reach out to people, but on the other hand, tell them, you know, you got to come to us too, because there's 6 town councilors and there's 500 residents. So, you know, they have a better shot at reaching us than we do of reaching them.
Okay. Ann Phillips has a question.
I do, thank you. I'd like ask each candidate if they've read the detailed data from the basic survey on diversity and attitudes, and especially noted the high percentage of people who answered that they either agreed or strongly agreed with considering opening the field and the lake.
Where am I? I think this one starts with Chris.
So I did take a look at the survey, and I was very impressed. It was very comprehensive and amazingly well done, I thought, with a lot of data. So did I study the specifics about the field? No, but I did see, you know, the demographics, you know, and so with that would be a good place to start. If I'm not mistaken, there were only like 120 some odd people that participated in that. You know, there's definitely more people in town. You know, I saw that, to tell you the truth, and I was planning on filling it out, but I never did. And by the time I got around to it, it was a little too late. And so I apologize. But, you know, I was one of the outliers, I guess, of the lack of input. But I'm sure that there's more input to be given. And yeah, it's a good place to start. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. And Barbara.
Yes, I'm intimately familiar with the survey. There were 5 meetings of 2 hours each where the survey data was presented, and I was in all of those meetings. I am aware that there are people who want the lake and the field open to people who don't live in the Grove. We did talk about this a little earlier, but my feeling about the lake is we have to, well, both of them really, we have to look at what the logistics and the practicalities are. Like for the lake, you know, would we have new requirements if we were opening up the lake to people who don't live here? Would we have other additional legal requirements? What are they? How much would they cost? Where would that money come from? Similarly to the field, I don't think there's quite as much question about what facilities would be involved, but whether If there are trash issues, who's going to be responsible for that? Do people know about the rules and how to apply for a permit for the field? Those sorts of things. So for me, those are really practical issues. You know, can we work through the practicalities of it? But I'm certainly open to opening both of those areas up if the practicalities pan out.
Okay, and Phil.
So yes, I did read all that. And I think it's a shame more residents didn't take the survey. You know, I look at the same thing. I think those responses are people saying, I want the town to be more inclusive. So sure, let's open the lake, let's open the field and those type of things. You know, that has to be balanced against though the consequences. With the lake, I just feel I'm very worried about the liabilities. Like Barbara said, you know, you'd have to have restrooms then. Who's going to clean the bathrooms? Pressure on the lifeguards, the impact on the lake. These are things that are hard to work out. And I'm glad that the RASIC's also looking at it as well, because it's about perception. I want to be able to hold our heads up high and say, listen, the reason we don't invite you to the lake isn't because we are, you know, don't want people from the outside in our community. It's because of these other issues. So we have to look at those issues and so forth. But I'm worried about the consequences of it. And it's a balance. The positive part is it shows people want to be inclusive, and therefore maybe we should start having events at the pool or events at the this is our home. I think we should invite people in as we feel beneficial and share with them. But at the same time, I don't think it should be open-ended. You know, it's not the neighbor that has a new pool and just people just show up to the new pool and jump in. It's an invitation to come use some of the beauty and attributes, assets of the town. But just to open-ended, that's going to be quite hard and a lot of discussion to consider. Like I said, though, once again, I think it's great that we're looking at it and being inclusive. And if we come up with a reason that says no, at least we can tell people, here's the reason no.
Let me just say that I appreciate that. I just want to make the point that it's not 4 or 5 people or 3 people on one single committee who are pushing opening their lake. And I think that, you know, giving real thought to the numerous responses is important in balancing where this is coming from. It's not just a small group of people on one committee.
So what I would say we do is we say, okay, here's what would be required to open it up. Let's say it would require more lifeguards. It would require restrooms. It might mean more water testing. It might mean this or that. You bring that to the community or to the town council and say, listen, if we want to open it up and we can open it up, are you willing to do these things? So I just want to be clear and transparent about those potential costs or liabilities involved. I'm not saying no, but I just want to do it in a more aware way of that. Because once you do take that step, you don't want to step back.
I agree. It may turn out not to be a good idea. It's just I don't think it's that hard to get information from the committee. I don't think I don't think it's a big transparency issue. I just wanted to comment that the comments already made, that it's some widespread feeling. It may turn out not to work out at all. And I appreciate everyone's serious consideration.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Do we have anybody else with questions? Okay, and the questions have all been excellent. We're up to almost 5:15, actually past 5:15. So if there's nothing else that anybody's absolutely determined to ask, I'll say thank you to all of our participants, both the candidates and the sitting council members and the mayor, and to everyone who came and listened, and we appreciate the participation immensely. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgette.
Thank you all.
Yes,
Thank
Peter.
you. Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Georgia.
Good band at Hershey's tonight, if anybody's interested. 8 o'clock.
Have fun.